Hey everybody, it's Adam Tracy, and a big thing that is becoming more broadly used and more profitable is what I call COBO biz, collecting on the behalf of. And the reason it's become more popular, especially like into inbound in the US and EU, is that the availability of multi-currency accounts, cross-border payments, and such is becoming more difficult for a lot of businesses that operate in high-risk sectors, are just geographically bound in terms of like the currency they're using or the prevailing currency and whatnot. So, but it can be a very profitable model. And at a very base level, it's just like bill pay, right? And so the question is, how do I start one, right? And in the US at least, it all starts with money service business registration, right? Because, as I've mentioned many times here before, the definition of money transmitter is much broader at the federal level than it is at the states when you get to state money transmission licensing, right? And so the implication of registering as an MSB, which isn't a terribly difficult thing to do, is that it triggers Bank Secrecy Act, which triggers all your AML, KYC requirements and the like, and your CIP, customer identification. So you definitely need to know who you're dealing with, collect KYC, run them through the software, find out that they're above board, and you can move on from there. Now, in the States, the question becomes, do I need a state level license? And the general rule is, if you are transmitting money, on behalf of another person, is that you do trigger state level money transmission laws. But there's something called agent of payee. And the agent of payee exception is basically like, if I'm acting as the agent of the person receiving the funds, then I'm exempt from money transmission laws. Well, it's kind of an odd thing, because here, who are you really the agent of? The payor, which is the person sending you the money, typically overseas, or the payee, right? The one receiving the money. So depending on your model and like who your customers are, right? That's going to like vary as to whether or not you need the state level money transmission licenses. And like, if you need them, then you have to get the license in each state in which you want to make a payment to somebody, right? So the cleaner model is to basically like set up the relationships with payees and become their client. But of course, that means you're assessing the fee to them versus the person paying you, who really wants the service and needs the service more than that. So that's sort of the conundrum in it, right? But it can be very lucrative, even if you have to get the licenses. And outside of the licenses and having a company, you need a bank account that's friendly to this type of activity, of which there are many more than people would lead you to believe, and an FBO account for the benefit of, meaning like somebody sends into this quasi escrow segregated account, you yourself do not have title to it, and then you would initiate payment to the payee, right? And your fee would come out of the wash somewhere. So, and that's the nuance to it. And if you integrate, cross-border payment services and things like Circle or Solana Pay, where you have intermediary currencies, right, that are, based in crypto, you can make this very, very lucrative, because you can save yourself a great deal of money and ultimately do the conversions for very little and quicker, right? So it's conceptually not a very difficult thing to do outside of the need for the licensing, but getting the licensing, as I mentioned, can be onerous, right? Like, do you need to get the license in South Dakota right off the bat? Nothing wrong with South Dakota, but are you going to have any clients there? Probably not, right? So, you can piecemeal it and say, all right, well, we're going to start with the big states and go down the list, right? And that's kind of how it ultimately pans out. But there's this massive opportunity as the unbanked population grows, but international trade continues to grow, right? And people are just, the disambiguity, right, of different currencies and different markets is really what you're seizing upon in being a COBO, right? You're just basically like directing people in the right way. You're just directing traffic, and that traffic is currency, right? So that's the nuance to it. I've seen it work extremely well for a lot of people, right? Even like niche, right? I know somebody who just does it for yacht payments in Miami. It's crazy. So something to consider. But if you have any questions about a collecting on behalf of business and how that goes and how that gets set up, definitely hit me up, adamtracy.io, and I'll talk to you next time. Cheers.